Thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to get into the newspapers. We have a stack here, and joining us for that conversation, we have Joyce Lanyo. She is Country Director, International Child Development Program, and she is our guest. Madam Lanyo, a very good morning to you. I think you would have to unmute, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, Ben.
Good morning. It's always good to have you. But before we get into the papers, just a reminder to all of us that this segment is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they are for gratis, I should say, for free. They are offering free prostate screening, free female fertility screening. Men, women, you'll find something to go to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic for. Where can you locate them? Here in Accra, they are at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. Then there's Kumasi Krodoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's Takrady Anaji Estate, Community 22 in Tema, Techiman Hanswa and Esiama in Zima. Their call lines 0244 867 068, 0244 867 068. Alternatively, you could call 0274 234 321, 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But just the beginning of the news review, and Joyce Lanyo, as I mentioned, joins us for a conversation. Madam Joyce, so I know that in the last few weeks since we had an interaction, a lot of things have happened. I don't know whether we hadn't spoken around the time the Ashaiman incident happened. Then there has been the approval of members of, I should say, ministers who were vetted, and then the minority said, no, we're not going to buckle, we're not going to give them way unless certain things are done, and that we have to reduce the numbers of ministers. Yet, all of them got their approval. There are also some stories bordering on women's empowerment, among others. Any quick thoughts, anything that has caught your attention in the last few weeks that you'd like to share with us before we get into the papers?
Thank you very much, Ben. I would like to give my thoughts on the voting process, which gave credence to the members that are presidents, members of government that are president proposed to be approved by Parliament, and the outcome of the voting process and how we as citizens are feeling and all that. I mean, you agree with me that the country is going through a series of crises, and the hue and cry has been the reduction of the government size, and then looking at certain areas that we believe are part of cost areas that are affecting our economic situation. And so the opportunity came for our members of parliament to take that strong decision to give government an indication to actually reduce the size of government, but by disapproving these ministers that have been nominated.
Right.
But you see, human beings are a social structure, and they are into relationship. So notwithstanding the divide in parliament, they are really connected in other circles. And as we are human beings, we couldn't give the 100% belief and trust that they were going to, especially the minority group, were going to vote against this proposal. And so they did what they did. And there has been a whole lot of disapprovals and disagreements concerning, to the extent that they wanted to even look into who voted what and the outcomes. I want to say that, look, these parliamentarians, even though they are there on their various divides, they have relationship, friends, loved ones, people that have supported them and so on. And we want to give back to them whatever it is. So for the few members on the minority side to vote the way they voted, I mean, it's clear that they have certain commitments with those people, and they cannot continue to sing the praise of the minority if they consider them to have supported them, to have had a relationship with them, to have been family members or connected.
So tell me, were you disappointed with what happened? Because obviously it would mean that what we do not know is who from the majority who could have voted the other way, maybe against X minister or Y minister. That we do not know. But looking at the numbers, it is clear that a number of those from the minority end voted for some of these nominees for them to sail through. But the question is, are you disappointed with the way the vote went, which means that we would maintain a number of ministers? And do you feel the minority failed the people of Ghana, the masses?
Yeah, I was actually disappointed considering what the country has been going through and taking such a decision in the national interest.
Right.
So it was rather unfortunate, but this is democracy for you. I mean, people choose to speak to what they feel is their conviction. And so for them to have voted in that manner, I was disappointed. But then they thought they could go with whatever it is that was on the table to continue the government agenda, not thinking about the economic crisis that we are going through, the IMF and all the issues around it, the debt exchange and the outcomes of all those things,
right,
and even economic situations of Ghana. So I was actually disappointed. But it's the beauty of democracy. I mean, people, even though are aligned to a particular area, would want to project what they have inherently as their conviction when it comes to issues around this. And like I said, relationship, friendship, and all that played into it. But if you ask I was actually disappointed. That means we are going to continue to go with this status quo, which has really not helped us.
Let me just stay in Parliament briefly over the next maybe 2 minutes so that we can wrap and get into the papers. There's another topical issue that the Speaker of Parliament has given voice to. He has vocalized and he's been vociferous in talking about it, LGBTQI. There are different positions in the country. I noticed a story yesterday where CNN suggests that in their story that Ghana has softened its stance on LGBTQ on the back of Mr. President's comments when U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris was in town. She left town yesterday. When pushed to speak about LGBTQI, Mr. President said that, you know, some modifications were going on and that, you know, in the end, the buck stops with him, that the bill, even if it passed through Parliament, would come to him, suggesting that he had the final say. The Speaker of Parliament on the other side suggested, you don't have any such say. We're going to pass this bill into law. And he had some choice words for anyone trying to influence us. There are those who have said that, but you guys, you don't even have what it takes. You don't have power. In fact, you need an IMF deal. The Americans are helping you cross that hurdle. So there are different dynamics to it. What do you make of that situation? And mind you, Uganda has passed a bill into law that criminalizes homosexuality in all its forms, and the sentences are hefty. Some have said they go against human rights, up to about 20 years imprisonment. What do you make of it? Should we get to that point?
Thank you very much, Ben. I mean, this issue about our president not coming clear in terms of the LGBTIQ and our Speaker of Parliament coming out very vociferous to indicate what our stance is. It's something that we really have to appreciate. For me, the president, being a renowned lawyer, a human rights activist, and all the accolades that he deserves, was trying to be diplomatic. Because look, the Americans are coming with a chunk of resources that we don't have. And of course, we on the other side will be at the beck and call of the American people in terms of whatever it is that they are putting on the table. So the president was quite diplomatic and careful in answering some of these questions. But then the Ghanaian system, it's clear that even without the passing of the law, our values, our thoughts, our beliefs that not allow us to go that tangent. And so there is a way of going about it to make it a bit diplomatic in the presence of the international media and all that. So President was quite diplomatic in stating our stance. Well, the Speaker of Parliament was very clear as to where we stand in terms of LGBTQI. And I really appreciate his stance, but at a time when diplomacy is playing into this discussion, I was thinking he could have been a bit moderate in coming out, because it's still our decision to say yes or no.
Right.
And the fact that our president was quite diplomatic doesn't mean that we are going to toe the line of the LGBTQI. So it's diplomacy versus blatant truth and the reality on the ground. So that's what it is, actually.
Well, so you're basically saying the two sides played the different sides of the coin, all on behalf of the country. What is interesting, though, and tomorrow I just might bring this up, there was an Afrobarometer survey some time back. Yesterday, our very own Isaac Kofi Ajay put up something that reminded me of that. The tolerance levels of different African countries towards LGBTQ. And you would realize that Ghana is in the top, in fact, in the bottom 10 bracket in terms of tolerance. I think our tolerance level is about 7%. The lowest, Gambia and the others, about 3%. So it tells you that in terms of tolerance of that, per the survey, it is very low. But have the dynamics changed? And how do we play the political game without getting our fingers burnt? I guess that is something that those at the helm will have to do. For us from the bottom, we'll try to do our bit in informing the people, and they will have to do the rest of it. But Madam Lanyo, let's get into the Daily Graphic newspaper. Okay. U.S. Vice President deplores slave trade horrors. She was at the Cape Coast Castle, and she also visited the point of no return. Government selects Keta port investor by December. Ensuring food security, Agric must come under NDPC. Juma Odum proposes at the Graphic Development Series. There is also integrated aluminium industry project on course. That's according to the Lands Minister. On the back page, Ano wins day for Bechem United as they beat Dreams FC by 1-0, pipping them. Brekum Chelsea drew with Adriana FC 1 each. King Faisal 3, Karela United 2, Samatex 2, Kotoku Royals 1, Tamale City 2, Nswatraman 1, Mediama versus Gold Stars, Legon Cities versus Kotoko, and RTU versus Great Olympics. All those matches today. But my very own Krobe Asante Kotoko is in 7th place with 34 points. And but we have 2 games in hand. So if we play them, we'll be right, and if we win, we'll be right beneath Ediana Stars, who now have played 24 matches and are at 41 points. But the country needs a national program to drive agricultural development to ensure food security. An agricultural consultant for the J. Kufuor Foundation, Abraham Juma Odum, who made the call, said the national program covering agricultural development should be placed under the direct supervision of the National Development Planning Commission. Quoting him, he says, "Don't give agriculture to us politicians because it won't help the nation. Let's use the NDPC, where we can draw a roadmap that this is where we want to go. We don't need manifestos to drive agriculture. We need a national program to drive agriculture." What do you make of this? Because in a way, to a large extent, I agree with him. It is the executive, the politicians, the technocrats who will steamroll agric or whatever policy. But in the end, you know how we do the politics in our country. And this one comes and does that, and that one comes and starts that. If we had a plan that everyone had to feed into, wouldn't it work for us? Work better for us, Madam Lanyo?
Thank you very much, Ben. When it comes to agric, it shouldn't be politicized. There should be a national policy that will drive whatever we are doing within the agric sector. And I agree that the National Development Planning Commission or Committee will have to give us the strategies, the medium-term plans, and all those, so that we will follow in that order. We have a vast area of land that is almost lying fallow. A certain portion of the country, Galamsey is taking over. We are not in control. The food prices are escalating every now and then. We are importing tomatoes, onions, where we have, look, I was in Burkina Faso in the early 80s, and that place was virtually a grassland. There is no, they had to build dams to be able to do their farming. Today, think of issues around tomatoes and even onions. Burkina Faso is supplying Ghana. What happened to us?
There was a time when we imported seedlings from Burkina Faso because their tomatoes are juicier. They have certain qualities that we like. So we imported the seedlings and all of that. Ask me where that project ended up. We spent some millions, if I am not mistaken, and still nothing. We're still importing from them.
Ben, it's really, really sad. It's really, we will have to put all these politics aside and take decisions, policies in the national interest. I mean, for food security can be a national security. If we don't have food on the table, imagine what we have. We have a critical mass of our youth just going and coming, not knowing what to do. You know, so for me, I believe that there should be a national policy that is overrun or taken over by NDPC and telling us how to, and demand, we civil society demand what happened to this policy. Where are we in terms of this policy? So that we can always be accountable to the people and have what it takes. Ghana is importing almost everything. And it's really, really sad. So I agree with that session that the Greek sector must come under the NBC and NDPC for policy direction, for planning, for whatever it is, and demanding how far we are going with whatever we've put in place, so that it becomes a national thing and we all own it and work towards it so that we have food security. Otherwise, we run the risk, and we're already running the risk. People cannot afford, even Gary, people can't afford Gary, a cup of margarine for Gary. And so it's very important so that we can engage our mass, we can use the policies, the emerging strategies to be able to develop our agri sector. We're still using the old-fashioned system. And there is technology, things are changed. I believe technology is being practiced within that agri sector, and some results are being yielded. But it should be escalated so that the lands that are lying fallow will be used to produce whatever we need, and we wouldn't go for the next door to import carrots, for example. I feel very sad when mangoes, I was going to buy mango, my lady told me that, oh, very soon the mangoes from Togo will kick in, and then we'll be all right, the prices will come down. How come we got to that stage that we should even import mangoes from Togo? So it's high time we put priority within our agri sector and make sure the policies are engaged in a manner that will employ the youth for us to get what we need. At least we are only 30 million Ghanaians, or 32 million. What about Nigeria, who are over 260 million? And yet we have the land, we have, I believe we have the experts within the sector, but we are not able to effectively manage all what we have within that agri sector, such that we should be importing. I agree with that session that NDPC should come over. And we need to hear a lot more from NDPC. NDPC, I know they are working through the medium-term plans, the assemblies and all that. But we should hear from them from time to time where we are with certain policies, what we have done so far, and what we need to do. Issues around accounting to the people on the level of agri sector, so that if we need to really rally up a lot more resources, rally up a lot more expertise to be able to accommodate our needs and demands, we are able to do it.
Right.
So that issues around our food security are addressed. Thank you.
Let's wrap in the daily graphic with some of these stories. So, integrated aluminium industry project on course, that's on page 20 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. That's according to the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abujinapo, who has said the government's quest to build an integrated aluminium industry in the country is on course and is progressing steadily. He said that was in line with the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation Act 2018, that is Act 976 to be specific, which established the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation, that is the JIADEC, to promote and develop an integrated aluminium industry in the country. Now, delivering the keynote address at the workshop, Mr. Jinapo, who is also the Member of Parliament for Damongo in the Northeast region, emphasized the need to add value to the country's mineral resources to ensure optimal benefits from them. He said the government had, since 2017, been pursuing the path for all mineral resources, including gold, bauxite, iron ore, lithium, and other green minerals. Let's also look at the international front so we can wrap with the Daily Graphic and move on. Outgoing Nigerian government proposes pay rise, and I smiled, in fact, when I saw this. Typical of what we would do here. But Nigeria's outgoing government has recommended that the new administration of President-elect Bola Tinubu give public sector workers pay rises after removing a fuel subsidy in June, Labour Minister Chris Ngige said. President Buhari, who steps down in May, had planned to remove the popular but costly subsidy in 2022 as part of fiscal and petroleum sector reforms, but abandoned the plan because of fears of protests in the run-up to last month's election. Previous Nigerian governments have promised to remove the fuel subsidy, which most economists say is an unsustainable drag on public finances, but have failed to do so because of fierce opposition from citizens. So in this instance, it's an interesting one because let's give them more money, public sector workers, as we take away the fuel or energy subsidies. Here, it is usually the politicians who, at the end of their tenure, will now be, giving pay rises here and there, post what some commissions that have been set up have given as base rates for this and that. I'm talking about ex gratia and more. Any quick reactions as we move on to the Ghanaian Times?
Thank you very much. And the issues around pay rise. I mean, as public sector workers, as public servants, we would definitely ask for pay rise. But once we are thinking about pay rise, we should also think about our inputs into whatever will give rise to this pay rise. Usually within the public sector space, I want to say that most of us are not up to the task in terms of delivery, service delivery.
Right.
Now we have digital services, so you can just log on to issues, onto whatever you need and apply or get what information you need. But for previously, it would take you one week or maybe 2 weeks or 1 month for a public sector worker to come to your aid in terms of a service you would need. So if you need a pay rise, then it means your output should also be increased. Your time on task, your delivery, your punctuality, your response to whatever it is that is demanded of you for the service you render should also be up to the scratch. Otherwise, the pay rise will come and yet your services will be the same. I don't think the public will be happy.
Right.
So if we demand pay rise, then we have to match up. Of course, the economic conditions are very harsh, and so things are quite expensive, and we need a pay rise. Thinking about pay rise, our mode of work should also be improved. Our services should also come to the level that is expected of us, rather than that lackadaisical way of working.
Recently, we've heard from the likes of Ben Arthur of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, among others. We'll see how that pans out in Ghana's terms, though this is specifically Nigeria-oriented. But the Ghanaian Times newspaper, fighting crime and transformation agenda. Police introduce 24-hour system. District station commands to run 3 shifts nationwide. That's the major story there. Then NDC conducts balloting for presidential aspirants. Mahama picks number 1, while before picks number 3. Coincidence? And USV announces $1 billion fund for Africa. But I'll look at that story in terms of the police rolling out that 24-hour system. You've obviously heard of complaints of people saying at night or something, I'm getting robbed. I call and nothing happens. So the police administration has begun the implementation of a 3-shift district and station command system for 24-hour coverage in all police commands across the country. This is to ensure effective supervision, command and control at all police facilities, especially during the night when most crimes are committed and the services of commanders are needed most to respond adequately. In an interview with the Ghanaian Times yesterday, Dr. George Akufo-Dampare said the new system formed part of the revised transformational agenda of the service and in line with international best practices as adopted by the United Nations and other advanced countries. Now, until the introduction of the 3-shift system, each police district and station was under the supervision and control of one district commander and a station officer, respectively, for 24 hours a day. And that is what we're rolling aside and adopting this new 3-tier, if you like, system. Any reactions to this?
Yeah, I want to really commend the police administration for their good work these days. Police have been very responsive. Police have actually come up to the aid of citizens in terms of security. When you talk about 24-hour system, that's very, very good, so that the police will be available anytime we need them. But we still have systems where police have actually taken a lackadaisical or a lazy approach to issues around security. When people call on the SOS line, sometimes the police is at the glaring situation of these young boys, robbing people, and yet do not act. You report and you don't get the response that you need. In no time, they are released and there is no action taken against them in court. So if you are going to have this 24-hour police system that will be available to citizenry, that's a good measure. And I really want to commend the IGP. But there is still room for improvement where the policemen should be conscientized about their role and how they need to take prompt action on issues around security. Quite recently, and even these days, the robbery is daytime robbery. They now know that in the night, people have taken their measures, security measures. But we have these Okada boys snatching phones, people's bags, running away, running them around and pulling them out of cars and all that. We want the IGP to take a look at that situation so that the rule that Okada people should be in their helmets maybe should be registered in a way and we know the rules they are applying so that we can also track in terms of any aggression against citizenry or any theft. Police will come up. So I want them to take a look at situations where we have our motor riders still not wearing helmets, jumping traffic lights, as if they are not part of the law system. And so if you ask me, we commend the IGP for this 24-hour police surveillance, but then a bit more should go into to check the other side of the coin where you have people, coming against other citizens, robbing them. You report and you do not get response, and they keep on going, especially around the motorway where somebody's bag was snatched whilst he was in a car.
Right.
Snatched, and then circle around the circle area where immediately you take out the phone, somebody slaps you and takes the phone away and all that. So yes, police officers are doing much, and we want to commend the IGP for this good job. We are very grateful.
2 more papers and it's a wrap. The Business Finder reflects what we've already spoken about, the harnessing of the full benefits of the downstream aluminium industry per what the Lands Minister Samuel Abu Jinapor tells us. U.S. offers over $1 billion support for women-led businesses. That story is on page 4. But I want to wrap with the Daily Guide newspaper. Some interesting stories. Nana turns 79. I'm talking about His Excellency the President. Yesterday was his birthday. Belated happy birthday to you, sir. Minority fumes over common fund. And just quickly, so these are the 2 stories I want you to reflect on. 1, suicide attempt, not crime. And of course, with that private member's bill given a breath of life, now suicide will be decriminalized. And these people are to be seen as brothers and sisters in need of help, medical assistance, rather than to be put in jail. And that has been a long time coming, and I am all for it. The other one, minority fumes over common fund, and the District Assembly's common fund has been owed over 6 billion Ghana cedis since 2018. The minority in Parliament says, if you don't give us the sums involved, anything that comes from the Finance Ministry will block in Parliament. Any reactions to these? Very quickly, we have to go.
Yeah. The issues around the common fund, I mean, the least talk about it, the better. Resources meant for the district assemblies for our economic woes have not been forthcoming. And so projects have been stalled. Other developmental issues are now halted because of this. We want to say that even though we are undergoing this hardship and this IMF program, which will bring a lot more hardship to us, I mean, the development processes must continue. If you look at some of these common funds, we are told they are rechanneled into something else rather than what they were meant for. I would plead with government to take a second look so that every facet, every corner of the country will receive some amount of development that will satisfy the citizens, because we are also paying taxes and want to see what our taxes are being used for. So we will be grateful if these district common funds are released timely. So issues around sanitation is big if you go to some of these districts.
Right.
Yet because the common funds have not been released on time, development has stalled. So we will encourage government to take a second look and make sure that resources get to the assemblies for them to do their work.
Thank you. Would you like to touch briefly on the other matter?
Well, you know, Ghana, I was going to say Ghana is endowed with a lot of resources that we, for example, this integrated aluminium, we want them to actually develop that area, but the mitigating steps that will have to be taken to stop pollution or degradation of land should be looked at carefully so that we don't run the risk of what we are seeing today.
And I am in total agreement with you on that point. We do have to go, but Madam Lanyo, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning, Joyce Lanyo.
Thank you, Ben. I'm grateful.
Doing us the honors. And I've been following you on social media. I see that you've been spotting some of my stuff and liking them. Thank you so much, Madam.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. I'm grateful.
And that is Joyce Lanyo, who joined our conversation this morning as we got into the news papers. Let me just get this. So, right before we get into sports, let me just get this. All right, so we'll save that for later. I wanted to get her specific title. She is into international children's development, empowerment, among others. But this segment has been brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they're offering you free prostate screening, free female fertility screening. You can locate them in Accra, Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi, Kronum Abuehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrady Anaji Estate, Community 22 in Tema, Techiman Hanswa and Esiama in Zama. You can reach them on 0244 867-068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Well, time now for us to get into sports. That comes up next. Stay.